Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time we're tackling a topic that I think is really important and often gets overlooked or misunderstood.
Sure.
African history.
A big one.
We're going to challenge some of those narratives about pre-colonial societies.
Okay.
And really look into how complex European colonialism's impact was and is.
Yeah.
To help us with all this, we're going to be looking at primarily How Europe Underdeveloped Africa by Walter Rodney.
Excellent choice.
So get ready to have your mind blown.
Absolutely.
Because this deep dive is really going to change how we think about a whole continent.
You know, it's fascinating how often Africa is portrayed as just this like blank slate before Europeans show up.
Right.
But Rodney just throws that idea right out the window. Mm-hmm. He just brings to life these vibrant and super diverse societies that were thriving long before colonialism.
Like when he describes Great Zimbabwe, he talks about this European archaeologist who compares it to the Egyptian pyramids.
Wow.
Like these massive feats of engineering.
Incredible.
And
here's the thing.
What's that?
Great Zimbabwe wasn't built with slave labor.
Oh, wow.
Unlike the pyramids, which tells us a lot, right? About the social structure there.
It really does.
It suggests a society where skilled labor was organized differently.
Right.
Maybe even more fairly.
It really makes you think about, how much we impose our own ideas on the past.
Totally.
So what else did Rodney show us about these overlooked societies?
We'll take the trans-Saharan trade routes.
Right.
These weren't just, dusky paths.
Right.
These were like the arteries of a complex economic system across the entire continent.
Yeah.
For centuries, goods flowed along these routes. Gold salt connecting West Africa to North Africa and even further.
So it's like this whole network of civilizations all connected, exchanging goods and ideas and technology.
Absolutely. It paints a whole new picture.
It really does.
And we can't forget about the role of women in these societies.
Right.
Rodney highlights powerful figures like the Queen Mother.
Okay.
With huge political and social influence.
Yeah.
From places like Mali Asante and Buganda.
Wow.
It really challenges those stereotypes.
It does.
We often have about women's roles.
It's really interesting because Rodney argues that Europe's economic rise is completely tied to exploiting Africa.
Right.
And this was even before formal colonialism even began.
Totally. It's like two sides of the same coin.
I see.
One side can only gain if the other loses.
Yeah.
And a prime example of that is the transatlantic slave trade.
Oh, of course.
We all know about the millions of lives lost.
Right.
But Rodney goes deeper.
Okay.
He talks about the devastating ripple effects on African societies.
It goes so much further than just losing people. It's like entire societies were destabilized. There was a shift towards warfare and kidnapping. Local economies were just completely warped.
And he points out that even countries like Dahomey, who weren't directly part of the slave trade, were still hugely affected.
Wow.
Their economies became completely dependent on European markets, leaving them vulnerable to all these price changes they couldn't control.
That's crazy.
It shows how interconnected the world was, even way back then.
It really does.
Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy, right?
Yeah. It's pretty heavy stuff.
It is.
And that kind of leads us into colonialism, which is, often shown as this positive force,
Oh, yeah. Like it brought progress to Africa.
Exactly. But Rodney just completely dismantles that.
Yeah. He does a great job of showing how all this colonial infrastructure, like railways, was mainly designed for taking resources out of Africa. Not actually to help people there.
So they're like veins just sucking resources out to the coast.
Exactly, taking them away.
And not leaving anything.
Not much.
For the people who live there.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the railways did connect some communities within Africa.
Right, but the main purpose was always extraction.
Okay.
And it wasn't just railways.
What else?
They underinvested in education, too.
Oh, yeah.
Fred Rodney talks about the Belgian Congo, where there was almost no secondary education for Africans.
It's crazy how open they were about it.
It is.
They basically said that too much education would make Africans unfit to serve their own people.
Like, it's straight up colonial paternalism.
Yeah.
This idea that they knew better. and needed to keep Africans dependent on them.
Right.
And even when they did provide some education, it was usually about agriculture and focused on keeping things the same.
Okay.
Instead of, introducing new techniques.
Right. That could have actually helped.
Exactly. It's like even when they were supposedly being helpful, it was designed to keep Africans trapped.
Rodney has a great quote about this.
Oh, yeah. What is it?
He says, "How else can one explain the fact that the Christian church participated fully in the maintenance of slavery and still talked about saving souls?"
Wow, that's just...
It's unbelievable.
The level of hypocrisy.
Amazing.
This belief in European superiority was everywhere.
But even with all of that,
yeah,
Africans still resisted.
Of course.
Rodney tells this story about Shaka Zulu.
Oh, yeah.
This amazing military leader who came from a totally pre-colonial context. He could have led this huge slave revolt. But instead...
What did he do?
He built up this powerful army.
Wow.
And expanded the Zulu state.
So he showed African leadership.
Exactly.
Even while colonialism was spreading.
Makes you wonder what Africa could have been without all that disruption and exploitation.
It's a good question.
And it wasn't just military resistance.
No.
Right?
Absolutely not.
There was education played a big role too.
Oh, definitely. Even with all its problems.
Yeah.
Education helped fuel these nationalist movements. People like John Chilemwe in Malawi.
Oh, yeah.
Challenged all those colonial assumptions.
Right.
And inspired others to fight back.
He really understood.
He did.
The power of education.
Yeah.
And used it for good.
It's like resistance took so many different forms.
It really did.
Military, intellectual, spiritual.
Yeah, and we have to recognize
we do
that strength and resilience.
Yes.
Africans weren't just victims.
Right.
They were shaping their own destinies.
Absolutely. That's a key takeaway from Rodney's book.
Yeah.
He emphasizes that even facing huge obstacles, African people kept resisting.
Yeah.
And fighting for their freedom.
It's really inspiring.
It is.
And that brings us to today. Understanding this history is so important for understanding all the complexities of modern Africa.
It helps us see how the effects of colonialism are still playing out.
So if we believe, Rodney, that development and underdevelopment are two sides of the same coin,
like we were saying,
then what does real fair development look like?
That's the question, isn't it?
It is.
And I think it means rethinking our ideas. About progress and success.
So instead of just taking resources, we invest in them.
Exactly, both natural resources and human potential.
And instead of forcing solutions on people, we support local initiatives.
Yes, let communities decide what's best for them.
That makes sense.
It's about recognizing the knowledge and strength that's already in Africa.
So like those railways we talked about, instead of just taking resources out, what if they connected communities within Africa?
That's a great example. That's the kind of shift we need.
Right.
Imagine transportation systems designed for African people and businesses.
Not just for outside interests.
Exactly.
And with education, we can support systems that encourage critical thinking, innovation,
and cultural pride. Instead of just copying those old colonial models.
So real development needs more than just economic changes.
It does.
It needs a change in mindset.
Absolutely.
Both within Africa and globally.
We have to get rid of those ideas of dependency and replace them with belief in African potential.
And challenge those assumptions of European superiority.
Exactly. They're still around.
They really are.
Yeah. It's a lot to think about.
This deep dive has really changed how I think about all this.
Me too. It's so interesting.
It is. Yeah. It really has made me rethink things. For sure, if you're listening and you feel like you need to kind of shake up your understanding of African history. Rodney's book is a good place to start. But it's important to remember. It's just one piece of a much bigger story.
There's so many other voices and perspectives that we need to explore too.
So thinking about like genuine development, how do we actually make it happen?
Right. How do we go from theory to action?
Exactly. What can we learn from the past to create a better future?
Well, I keep thinking back to Rodney's idea about development and underdevelopment being two sides of the same coin.
Right.
What if we flip that coin over?
Okay.
And imagined a world where development didn't mean one side winning and the other losing.
So instead of just taking resources,
exactly,
we invest in them.
Yes, both natural resources and human potential.
And we support local communities.
Yeah, letting them decide.
What they need.
Like those railways.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of just taking stuff out.
Right.
They could be used to connect people.
Exactly.
Help trade within Africa.
Support local economies.
That's the kind
That's what I'm talking about.
Shift.
We need systems designed for African people.
Yeah.
Not for the rest of the world.
And with education, instead of those old colonial models, we could have systems that value critical thinking.
Yes.
Innovation.
And cultural pride.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's not just about economics.
No, it's much bigger than that.
It's about changing
our whole
way of thinking.
Our mindset.
About development.
About Africa.
Absolutely, both within Africa and outside of it.
We need to challenge those old ideas.
We do.
About dependency and European superiority.
They're still so powerful.
They really are. It's been amazing to really dig into all this.
Rodney's book is just so thought-provoking.
His deep dive has really
given us a lot to think about.
Yeah, for sure.
I know I've learned a lot.
Me too. And hopefully everyone listening has too.
So if you're feeling inspired to learn more, I encourage you to seek out different voices and perspectives.
Absolutely. There's no one single story of Africa.
Right. It's a huge and complex and fascinating continent.
And it's important to remember that.
So as we learn more, we have to keep an open mind.
For sure.
And be willing to question everything.
Even our own assumptions.
Well, that's all the time we have for today.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Into African history. We'll be back soon.
We will.
With another exciting topic. So until then,
keep learning.
Keep questioning.
And keep diving deep.